Welcome back to Power on Politics. The Liberal caucus gathered in London, Ontario this week to plot a response to the anger and anxiety Canadians are voicing about housing and the cost of living. The Prime Minister and key ministers got an earful from nervous MPs and then rolled out some initial measures to deal with housing and the high cost of food. So here's the big question. Will it all work? Let's check the pulse of federal politics with our panel of insiders. Fred DeLorey is the managing partner at DeLorey Public Affairs and former Conservative campaign manager. Mélanie Richer is a senior consultant at Earnscliffe Strategies and former director of communications for the New Democratic Party. And Greg MacEachern with CAN Strategies is a former Liberal ministerial staffer. All right, gang, let's get to it. So, Greg, I'm going to start with you because you think what happened at the Liberal caucus with their announcements was the best political move of the week. Make that case.
Not only was it a good play, it was a ultimately well-needed play. We all read the coverage. We knew what was going in. MPs angry. And the thing that they have to do is do these announcements without looking desperate. And so if you look like you're just pulling things like Jerry Seinfeld trying to find a reservation, it's not going to work. And what I thought was really interesting is, look, first of all, yes, it needs to be done. Housing is horrendously expensive. Rent is out of reach. But the way they did it politically, quite smart. Sean Fraser, full disclosure, I've known him for about 20 years, did a smart thing in that keeps the story going. He challenged the provinces to do the same. I worked at City Hall in Halifax for a year. I knew as soon as they did that announcement in London and the mayor was there, I know that councillors were phoning their mayors and saying, how do we do this? How do we get in on it? So it keeps the story going. And you know, a couple of weeks ago, the Prime Minister got in a lot of trouble for saying that housing wasn't necessarily a federal responsibility. I'm sure he'd like to take that back, and he's not entirely wrong. This is a better way to tell people that there is more responsibility around this issue than just the feds.
Right. If you want the money, you got to sign up, and you can't say the truth out loud. Greg, you know you can't say that. Mélanie, what did you think of this? Did they avoid looking desperate and instead look deliberate, which is something they have struggled to do from these issues?
Right. I think what Greg said about they needed to do this, I think is really true. We started the week. Everybody was talking about how bad this Liberal caucus was going to be, how upset Liberal caucus members were, and that this was going to be a moment for Trudeau about how he could answer those that upsetness. And I think he did. Genuinely, I think the story at the end of the week is the food cost measures, and I think the story at the end of the week is this removal of the GST on new builds. I will say the different lens that I had that on this weekend, and maybe a win that I would give to the New Democrats this week is this promise has been in the Liberal platform since 2015, and it has taken them so long to move on it. And
this is removing the GST on
removing the
rental bills,
GST.
Because they argued it wouldn't be effective. They went with another program, but now their argument is that interest rates are so high, we need to do this as well, right? That's their explanation.
Exactly. And what I thought was strategic from the New Democrats when they were trying to push the government to do this, you know, it's been months now that they've tried to push the government to do this, is they went through those platforms and they said, hey, action is needed on housing. Here are the things that you promised. How about you just do A, B, and C, and then this will start moving the needle for folks. So I thought that was a cool win for the NDP in that story as well.
Yeah, she did that, Greg. She took a win for your crowd and turned it into a win for her crowd. So Fred, your crowd.
We're happy. This is keeping Parliament working.
We got a confidence and supply agreement happening right here at the PMP table.
Go right ahead.
But you know, Fred, how do you think the Conservatives are looking at this? Right, like the Liberals have kind of been fumbling around on some of these issues. There's the veneer of getting their act together and making some progress. How do you think the Conservatives view all this?
Well, I think it's great the Liberals are finally talking about it. This is a very serious issue that has really gathered Canadians' attentions over the last number of months. And Conservatives, Pierre Poilievre has dominated on this issue. This is his issue. Yep. He owns this issue right now. And this week, it seemed like a bit of a fumbling mess on the Liberal side. You know, Mr. Fraser came out, and full disclosure too, I've known him for 8 years. He defeated me when he first got elected.
So you've got a chip on your shoulder.
Look, I like Sean, nice fella, but you know, he came out and he said this is going to be like something we've never seen before. This announcement really raised expectations high, and then they came out and announced this little, you know, it's a big deal in London, a housing announcement, $7 million that was already 74, sorry, but previously earmarked in the budget. It's already there. It's not new money. And then they came out the next day with a more robust plan to announce. So the communication seems very weak from my side of things with the Liberals. This is an issue. You know, they used to own it, and they don't anymore. I don't know if it's the policy. It seems to be a drift on the communication side of things, and that's where they need to fix where they're going.
But you know, Fred, I felt when the Prime Minister actually spoke, you know, at the closing news conference, that they were a little bit sharper. Like, it wasn't minister after minister after minister after minister in this big long thing that should take 20 minutes, takes 3 hours, and it's about 40 different things. Like, so they were a little bit, this is what's new and this is what's next, as opposed to the litany of things they've done in the past. So they seem to be, I don't know, a little bit more focused, right?
Well, look, their strength is the Prime Minister, and I've written about this.
Right.
Justin Trudeau, for all his faults and that people may not like him, he is a solid communicator when he's on fire, when he goes out there and does it. Pierre Poilievre is owning this issue. No one else in the Conservative Party is really doing it. It's him. We presidentialize our elections.
Right.
The next election is going to be who is our Prime Minister. I know we don't vote for it directly, but that's what everyone's going to be thinking.
So Greg, on that, with the Prime Minister, you know, the anonymous Liberal source is making a comeback. I mean, it's the comeback story of the summer, and they were grumpy about him and his staff. You know, it's some people saying maybe he's on the clock. He's got like 6 months to get this sorted out, you know, or the messenger might have to change. Do you think they did enough? I mean, is it too early to tell? Where do you think your party is at this point in time?
I think senior Liberals would admit that they have a habit of doing a big announcement and then forgetting about it and moving on to the next thing, you know, and it might be dealing with the hurricane. But the fact that this kept going, I think, is a good sign. But you're right. We had a little bit of this in May. We had the Liberals had their biennial convention here in Ottawa, and the mood was very good. And this is Trudeau's party. He really does own it. But this is not a one and done. I think there was a lot of venting on that first day and directed, you know, maybe beyond, you know, the Prime Minister himself. Could be staff, could be other cabinet ministers. So I do think there's a bit on notice. People want to see the follow through. And I think we will. You know, I talked about last week, you know, we think that I would expect a bill the first week around housing and affordability. You're also probably going to see some legislation that is going to reflect the announcements that they just did. And probably we'll see pharmacare not too far after that.
Right. So Mel, on that point, and then we're going to move on to your pick of the week. They do need that follow through, and Sean Fraser suggested, like, London's the beginning. You know, then you see the letters from Calgary and other things, but they need to do this in Southern Ontario, Southwestern Ontario, Atlantic Canada. Like, they need real follow through here, right?
For sure. There's a lot of places that are angry right now, and I'm going to pick up on one of Fred's points earlier, that this was the Liberals' issue. Housing was the Liberals' issue. I remember when I worked for the NDP, you couldn't find a stakeholder anywhere across the country that would go against the Liberal plan, that would say, no, we need to do more and we need to do it faster. People were so happy that this was happening, and now fast forward how many years later, and that's not the sentiment at all. So I think it can't just be this announcement this week. That was a good first step for sure, but it needs to be continued, and it needs to be all of the time, and not just the crises of the day, because I know that that's important for governing, for the government, but to check in with people and make sure that people understand that they're hearing their worries and answering them in a real way.
So Greg thinks the Liberal caucus was a good move. You got something for us that you think was a bad move this week. What do you got?
Yeah, my bad move for this week was Pierre Poilievre came out this week kind of lamenting Prime Minister Trudeau about his trip to India, kind of using the same frame that Indian media was using against Justin Trudeau. And to me, I didn't like seeing that. And the reason I didn't like seeing that is because we know that there's been attempts from India to undermine our sovereignty. We know that there's been attempts of foreign interference, and to see the Conservatives and Pierre Poilievre come out so strongly against Chinese foreign interference, and then to make light or to punch when it wasn't necessarily. There's a lot of stuff that you can criticize Mr. Trudeau about. I didn't think that this was it. And it, to me, as somebody watching that, it said that I was using the foreign interference from China as a political weapon. I didn't mean it. It wasn't genuine. And this is not something that I think we need answers about, and Canadians deserve those answers.
Fred, it used to be a tradition that sort of politics ended at the border, right? You didn't make politics about foreign trips, and like that's gone out the window since that.
A lot of traditions are gone.
Yeah. It's been a disruptive time. But like I was on that first India trip in 2018 as a reporter then, and it didn't go well, and it became a real problem from here. But what do you make of this and sort of this? People seem to be willing to side with Modi, as if the Modi government is a good actor in this space necessarily.
Yeah, look, if a foreign leader and a member of the G20 is criticizing our prime minister or our government, we have to look at what that means and why they're doing that. I think that's fair game.
Yeah.
And if there's stuff that we can make hay of that as Conservatives, then we should. Any opposition party should. I think if it's legitimate, if they believe in what those issues are, they should be able to push out those comments. So I don't see this as a problem at all. I don't see this at all in line with foreign interference. As you know, I'm very well.
Yes.
Lots to say on foreign interference.
Yes.
That doesn't, and I don't align with my Conservative Party on this and a lot of their stances on this. But in this instance, I don't see this as an issue. I feel we have a G20 country who's critical of our prime minister. I think it's fair to raise that.
But, Greg, there's a lot of other issues at play rather that maybe just go beyond whatever Justin Trudeau did on this, is what the Sikh population is doing in Canada with the Khalistan referendums and things. I mean, what do you make of how the whole India Part 2 fallout played out?
I think the rush to dump on Justin Trudeau at the expense of your country is problematic. And I remember when the Conservatives were in power, they were very upset when opposition MPs would go to Washington and there was a meeting they didn't like. And then there's the individual here, Modi. Back in 2009, he was refused a visa by the United States because of his role when he was a regional politician around a riot. There were many deaths. Patrick Brown, former Conservative MP, current mayor in Ontario, I remember he got his wrist slapped by DFATE for his dealings with them. So I would say on this one, in terms of who the actors are involved, I would pump the brakes a little bit before I rush to join the side of the Prime Minister of India.
I don't know if it was the brakes, but there was a problem with the plane, and it kept him there a little bit longer than he wanted to be there. And Fred, that'll bring us.
Speaking of planes,
teed him up for that.
Well, speaking of planes, your best move of the week involves a plane.
It was a 45-second clip by Mr. Poilievre on WestJet that has exploded and seems to have dominated social media for the last week. It's been 6 days. It's still going on. We've had millions of people have watched this clip, and large part is because of some other actors interfering, if you will, and pushing out, saying that they think it's ridiculous has happened. Jan Arden brought attention to it. A local union spoke out ridiculously on this. And Mr. Poilievre has weighed in. And then about an hour ago, 6 days later, a Liberal cabinet minister has now weighed in on this video. This is video, 45 seconds of Mr. Poilievre leaving the convention, going to Calgary on a flight, and giving his hour-and-a-half speech in 45 seconds to a raucous crowd and seeing people cheering on the plane. I don't remember the last time I saw this many people having a great time on a plane or anywhere, just listening to a politician. So I think this was a great play. It was a quick thing that happened. I think it was good for the Conservative Party. I think it was good for WestJet.
Okay, well, we'll see. I mean, the union and management are now fighting, and the president says, so internally they could have some issues there. But look, this was either a charter flight or an extra commercial flight that was put on specifically for the Conservative traffic going to Quebec City from Calgary for the convention. And Greg, people have lost their mind over this. Is this a big deal in the real world, or is this a big deal in the worlds of partisan Twitter?
I'm not an engineer, but this is the first plane I've ever seen fly with only a right wing. But I think, let's switch this. Let's say if Justin Trudeau went up to the front of a plane right now, picked up the mic and did this. The outrage would be incredible. What's reflected here is where Poilievre is at this moment. He's in kind of a can't do much wrong right now. But there are people that are obviously concerned about him, and they're the ones who are being very vocal. I think this is kind of one of these tempest in a teapots, like the passports, things like that. If I was giving them advice, I would tell the Liberals not to get too exercised about it.
Mel, I don't remember Liberals being this upset when I watched videos of Omar Al-Ghabra with a microphone on a Via Rail train talking about high-speed rail that they were announcing. It's a private company. They made their decision, whatever. This whole thing is I don't know. It feels mad for the sake of mad. Yeah. I don't know. What's your?
That's definitely what my Twitter was, or my X, was. Over
whatever you call that hellscape now.
Whatever it's called was over the week. It was a lot of outrage and a lot of I'm never taking WestJet again, etc. Which it does seem overblown. It does seem to be a bit much. And to your point. When you are in elections, what you're trying to do is you're trying to put your leader in the biggest crowd as possible to show people at home that look how well liked he is, look how many people came to see him. So to have a plane of people cheering for him, if I'm watching that, I said, oh, people might like him. Now I thought the clip was super cheesy, and I don't know that it would have convinced a lot of people to vote for him. But to your point, so many people see it, and what we always, when I used to work for the party, what we used to always say to MPs is don't retweet stuff and include the video, because all you're doing is you're showing
You're
all of your
amplifying it.
followers this video, right? So I think it got a lot of eyeballs, it is a thing that happens.
I'll show Pierre Poilievre by giving him exactly what he wants by retweeting this and putting it on more phones. Okay, look, we got about 90 seconds left. Parliament comes back on Monday. You know, it looks like the Liberals are going to focus on affordability and public safety. Fred, just quickly, what are your expectations for what we're going to see when MPs get back into town?
Well, I think you're going to see Mr. Poilievre focusing on inflation and housing and those type of issues and continue to fight on crime and bail reform, and we're going to be pushing those things. And I think because of that, because he's leading the way, I think you're going to see the Liberals following and trying to catch up.
Yes, Greg, your crowd's going to be following Fred's crowd? Is that what we're going to see?
You know what? Not since Clark Kent and Superman has taking off glasses meant so much. There's a reason why the Conservative leader needed to rebrand. There's a problem with some of the ways he acted before. So when he gets back to the House, which he loves being in the House, is he going to be the guy in the commercials, or is he going to be the guy that we know that's been in Parliament for the last 20 years?
Right, he's going to at least need to put the tie back on when he goes back into Parliament, because there is that dress code sort of thing. Right. Mel, what do you think? Where are the NDP going to go on this? They're getting squeezed a little bit here in the last couple of weeks. What does Jagmeet Singh and crew need to do?
Yeah, I think they need to keep doing it and keep doing what they've been doing louder, because to your point, they're getting a bit squeezed. Everybody's now talking about the same things that they're talking about, and they're making more impact when they're saying it. So I think we're going to see Jagmeet talk about grocery store prices next week and actual measures that'll help those grocery store prices go down. So kind of calling the Prime Minister out and saying, hey, I've got it for you. You can do these things, and this will help today.
And interestingly enough, in the morning on Monday, the grocery store CEOs are going to be on Parliament Hill meeting with Industry Minister Francois-Philippe Champagne. So we'll see what happens there. Anyway,
I'll wait till Monday night to go shopping.
Yeah, or Tuesday to buy your groceries. Yeah, that's probably the best thing to do. All right, gang, thank you so much. Have a great weekend. Thanks so much to Fred DeLorey, Mélanie Richer, and Greg MacEachern.